Well, good afternoon and good evening and good day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this, at least here, rather dark early afternoon, evening here in the United Kingdom and around the world. Thank you so much. We've had a very good day so far in terms of the perspectives on the South Atlantic webinar. And I'm very excited to introduce to our attendees our fabulous panel, who we have here with us today. So just to introduce a little bit, this is a webinar organised between the University of São Paulo and King's College London. Myself, Ignacio and Francesca were the student leads on organising this, and we're thrilled to have had such great participation and audience members and such wonderful panellists. So thank you. This evening we'll be having our executive roundtable, looking south, Brazil and the Antarctic. The Executive Roundtable, as you know, is aimed to facilitate the interchange of opinions, views and information between the different panelists. The roundtable will extend from 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how excited everybody gets and how much people want to share. So that's open to you guys. And it will be organized through a debate agenda with our dear Dr. Ignacio Cardone as the moderator. And the agenda for the panel is to debate the future prospects and the available opportunities for Brazil in Antarctica. And we have some topics to discuss, such as the present and future needs of the PROANTAR. The focus will be on the Antarctic operations and looking at what needs to stay the same, what needs to change in the PROANTAR, which opportunities are being missed that could present a relevant advantage for Brazil, in particular in what regards its Antarctic scientific activity, the future of POLANTAR. So the focus there will be on the political aspects, such as the role of Brazil in the political future of the continent, looking at its strengths and weaknesses, and also then the economic prospects for Brazil, such as a focus on the potential of tourist exploration and also the integration of Antarctic tourism with Brazilian tourism, and also the prospects for Antarctic research for productive implementations such as bioprospecting, technological development, etc. And I'll hand over now to Dr. Cardone to introduce his panel. And thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to learning, I'm sure, a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, hello. Well, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for joining us in this special session of Perspective on the South Atlantic webinar. We will have our executive roundtable looking south, Brazil and the Antarctic. Our aim here is rather different from usual academic events. So the idea is to have more dynamic conversation between different actors. We have a very select audience, so we will have time for some conversation, interchange of ideas with them. The idea is to have about 60 minutes of debate within the roundtable, and afterwards some 30 minutes, so up to 30 minutes for interchange with the audience. Our panelists today are Professor Jefferson Simões of the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Vice President of the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research and pioneer of glaciological science in Brazil. Professor Francisco Aquino of the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Director of the Polar and Climate Center of the same university, with extensive experience in Antarctic climatological research. Commander Ignacio Souza of the Brazilian Navy, chemical engineer and head of the International Relations Division of the Brazil Antarctic Program. And Mrs. Claudia Rodd, a biologist, ecotourist guide with decades of experience in Antarctic tourism. My name is Ignacio Cardone. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of São Paulo and a specialist in Antarctic politics. I will be guiding the debate and interchange between the panelists and the audience. If you want to find more about our panelists, please visit the Eventbrite page or ask for a brochure that we will provide it. So let me start just by talking about Brazil's Antarctic operations. I would like you to talk and to cover about what is your opinion regarding the available infrastructure, its potential for future development, the acquisition or maintenance of new capabilities, and so on. So I think that Commander Souza could start by talking about the infrastructure and logistics of the PROANTAR, if you wouldn't mind.
Who's going to begin?
Yeah.
Shall I? Hello.
Hello?
Haynnee?
Yes, I'm trying to. Just a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. Sorry about that. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah.
Would you mind talking a bit about Brazilian logistics and infrastructure for Antarctic operations? What is the
Yes.
present situation, the future? If you can explain a little bit to our audience, where are we today and where are we heading in that regard?
I will talk just a little bit about our history to justify where we are today, okay? Thank you very much for the chance to talk about the Brazilian Antarctic program. And on behalf of the Admiral Rocha Martins, the program manager, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this roundtable. I made some notes I'd like to share, but don't worry, I'll be brief, I promise. Until the second half of the 1950s, Brazil's interest in Antarctica was quite incipient. Throughout the 70s, most important discussions were held internationally about how Brazil should perform regarding the Antarctic continent. In 1975, Brazil decided to accede to the Antarctic Treaty. And in 1982, the Brazilian Antarctic Program was assigned to the Interministerial Commission for Sea Resources, a collective body coordinated by the Brazilian Navy. In the summer of 1982-1983, Brazil carried out its first national mission to Antarctica. And since then, we carry out Antarctic operations every year. In 1983, we were approved as a consultative party in the ATCM. PROANTAR, I have to explain, I think I don't have to explain PROANTAR, Brazilian Antarctic Program. PROANTAR is an interinstitutional program executed by 15 bodies. We can say that the most important or the most active ones are the Ministry of Defense, through the Brazilian Navy, responsible for operational and logistic tasks, and the Brazilian Air Force, which performs flights in support of the program. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, responsible for political aspects. The Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovations, which defines the program's scientific policy. The National Council for Scientific and Technological Development, responsible for funding and coordinating scientific research, and the Ministry of Environment, engaged in environmental issues. And of course, universities and national research institutes, which are currently involved in Antarctic studies and activities. The Comandante Ferraz Antarctic Station was implemented within the Second Antarctic Operation in 1984 on Keller Peninsula, King George Island. Initially built with 8 containers, it was enlarged to 36 modules 1 year later. And since 1986, the station has been permanently occupied by Brazilian researchers and military officers. 8 years ago, in February, a fire damaged around 70% of Ferraz station facilities. The emergency modules, which were temporarily installed and were used to continue the national scientific research, which was mostly carried out on field camps and on board ships over the following years. PROANTAR has had annual average of 20 research projects in several areas: oceanography, biology, glaciology, geology, meteorology, and others. The construction of a new station effectively started in February 2016. It was carried out by a Chinese company and costs $99.6 million. The area of the new station has 4.5 thousand square meters, almost twice the size as the previous one, as well as 17 laboratories, a library, ambulatory, social spaces, living areas, and accommodations for 64 people. The new station has the same name and location as the previous one. 3 seasonal refuges had been installed by PROANTAR, one in King George Island, one in Elephant Island, and another one in Nelson Island. And a seasonal research module for atmospheric data collection called Cryosphere 1, located on the Western Antarctic ice sheet. I believe Professor Jefferson is going to talk about this project. The Brazilian Navy is responsible for the logistics of PROANTAR, including the maintenance of the facilities, transport of personnel, equipment, and supplies to Antarctica. The main equipment we used for this purpose are 2 Brazilian Navy vessels, the oceanographic support vessel Ari Rangel, and the polar vessel Almirante Maximiano. Shipping has been vital to PROANTAR. Ships have transported people, equipment, and supplies for PROANTAR since its establishment in 1982. And almost all PROANTAR cargo transport is done by ships. With laboratories and oceanographic equipment aboard, Ari Rangel and Almirante Maximiano serve as research platforms. In addition, the vessels transport scientists to set up field camps in the Antarctic Peninsula for their studies. Both ships are equipped with a helipad. Last month, the ships operated with the new Brazilian Navy helicopters for the first time in Antarctica. We also use Hercules aircrafts from the Brazilian Air Force with 6 flights scheduled over summer season. We usually carry out 4 annual resupplies by airdrop delivery to Ferraz Station during the Antarctic winter, when the sea ice extends hundreds of kilometers and make this area impassable by ships. There's a close relationship between Brazil and Chile concerning PROANTAR operation, since our ships and flights use the Chilean interior of Punta Arenas as a gateway to Antarctica, and we use the airstrip of the Chilean Antarctic base, Presidente Eduardo Freire. The exchange of personnel during the Antarctic summer is mainly made by flights. And specifically about the 2020-2021 season, just like all the national Antarctic programs, Brazil reduced the activities during this Antarctic summer season. Our priorities are logistics activities necessary to resupply Ferraz Station, and change of the winter over staff, and scientific activities that could be carried out remotely, and hydrographic surveys. Since March, very strict procedures have been put in place by PROANTAR to keep the coronavirus out of Antarctica. Sanitary precautions included the decontamination of supplies and cargo, as well as the ships and planes used in the mission. And prior to departure to Antarctica, vessels have gone into a strict quarantine for 14 days. Oswaldo Cruz Foundation tested all staff and crew members. They should be tested negative for COVID-19 prior to boarding and during the quarantine period. Both Brazilian vessels, Almirante Maximiano and Ari Rangel, set sail for Antarctica in early October. The ships will return to Brazil in December for taking on supplies and fuel and exchange personnel. In January, after a new quarantine, the ships will once again proceed to Antarctica and will return to Rio de Janeiro in April. We have planned to refuel the ships and receive cargo in Punta Arenas with no disembarkation, and we are not considering the use of Brazilian Air Force flights from Punta Arenas to Antarctica to exchange personnel due to sanitary requirements. And Ferraz Station will not be open for visitation this summer. Of course, the planned activities are subject to change since COVID-19 protocols currently in effect may change during the season. I'm not sure if you have to know more about the program or if you prefer to discuss first and have questions after all of us speak.
Sure. I would like to, if you know, I mean, the acquisition of a new polar vessel has been announced a few months ago. Well, actually, the last year and a few months ago it has been materialized. What the PROANTAR is looking with this new vessel? I mean, there is any new capabilities, any new theater of operation? What is going to bring to the program?
Well, thanks for your question. The official request for proposal, RFP, was published by the Brazilian Navy in June to establish the requirements and conditions to select the best proposal. We are calling new Antarctic vessel, but she has no name yet. She's not an icebreaker, but has a ice strength higher than Ari Rangel and Almirante Maximiano. And the main purpose is to replace the vessel Ari Rangel, providing logistical and operational support to the research projects of PROANTAR, and permitting some research on board. So there's no new. We are not going to buy another third ship. Is going to replace Ari because it has been a lot of time since we bought it.
Excellent. Thank you, Commander Souza. That's been great. Another important issue about operations is what are truly assets of Brazil operation in Antarctica. I'm speaking about scientific research, and especially I would like if you could give us some details on what are the hits and the misses, or at least which opportunities are being missing from a scientific point of view. I mean, what the operations are doing great, what it could be done better or in a different way. And maybe Professor Jefferson and Professor Francisco, who has a lot of experience on the field, could give us some perspectives on that.
Oh, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. So, I've been asked here in the first part of this presentation or discussion to talk about a little bit on the future needs of PROANTAR and being the focus, the Antarctic operation. I'd like to emphasize the question of enlarging our operations towards the center of the Antarctic ice sheet. For example, we have up to now, and we are maintaining the Cryosphere 1 model at 84 degrees south. This is essential for research within the continent and for the future of research in the field of geosciences, particularly glaciology and geophysics, but also for the chemistry of the atmosphere. Note that the existence for this module at 2,500 kilometers south of the Commandante Ferraz Station expands Brazil's area of operation by more than 1 million square kilometers. makes the research program complete, and of course, reinforces the country role in international forums. That's it. It increased political status within the Antarctic treaty system. A second point that I would like to point out, and it's quite, I would say, a dream of the scientific community, is to have it and to use the Embraer KC-390 to support missions to the interior of Antarctica. If it happens in the future, it will reduce the costs of missions, for example, to Cryosphere 1 and open a large area, geographical area for research. I would say that nowadays is the things that we can see as a challenge for the Brazilian Antarctic program. Otherwise, we have a very good structure for research within the new station. It's a map station with full capabilities for biological and some part of the atmospheric sciences. But of course, the Brazilian Antarctic program up to now is majorly coastal and maritime research program. And for some areas of research, we need to go further. We need to explore area that's 1.6 times the size of Brazil. I would have more comments, but more from the scientific side of things and the challenges of science. I think, if I understand, that's for tomorrow.
Excellent. I don't know if Professor Francisco Aquino has some views on that as well. You want to share something with us?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to get in with the webinar. Thanks again, Ignacio, Maísa. It's very nice to meet Commander Haynnee Souza, Jefferson Simões, and Claudia at this webinar. Well, I think I think in the same way that Professor Jefferson just talked about. We need to look for the interior of the continent. Of course, this is the largest ice sheet that we have in our planet. Since we start working in the Cryosphere 1 site, we start to develop our hemispheric monitoring that we can track the whole southern hemisphere and the whole southern Atlantic Ocean. We can realize nowadays with the global warming and the whole environmental change that the whole atmosphere was changing, especially in the southern hemisphere and the southern Atlantic Ocean. So the Brazilian Antarctic program, we have, in my view, three key sectors to operate our scientific advances: on board in the Brazilian Antarctic Station and in the interior of the continent at the Cryosphere 1. Of course, that Jefferson told, we need to expand, and we need to, and nowadays we have a very nice opportunity to connect, like always, our scientific program with the major economics and advantage and developments that the science in Brazil needs to respond against the climate crisis. We have very nice scientific results that we can afford to the Brazilian government, to the other countries for the Atlantic Ocean, for the two sides of the Atlantic Ocean, and of course with the whole North Atlantic countries. Because I am always thinking in the whole atmospheric circulation and the Brazilian program, and the whole support that we can provide for the global crisis. For sure, we have a lot of nice possibilities in research and economics development in Brazil or in the South Atlantic view. Always focused in the major goals that the whole nations looking for the, how can I say, looking for the Paris Agreement. If we talk about the healthy society, economic, and research, and Antarctica, it's a major scientific area for the new scenarios or for the future of our best understanding of the climate variability in the next 5 decades.
Excellent. I think that's great. I mean, really interesting. We are going to take some of those
Ignacio?
topics. Yeah.
I just like to make a comment on Professor Jefferson said about the new airplane, the 390 airplane. The use in Antarctic operations of this newest military aircraft, designed and then built by the Brazilian Embraer, is being studied, but we have two major questions. The first one is if it could operate in the Antarctic airfield of President Frei, is the first question. And the second question is if it could operate in the interior of the continent. So we are trying to solve the first one. We are going to make some consultations with the Chilean authorities. And if we have a positive response, we are going to test it on Frei first, and then study the possibility to use it on the interior of the continent. Of course, the new aircraft equipped with state-of-the-art technologies will provide efficiency and flexibility to our operations. So we are going to use it, of course. And the second one, I'll talk about it later. Please go on.
Thank you, Haynnee. So I think we have some topics that probably we're going to address it in the political section, which is next. But first, I would like to ask Claudia, what would you think? Would you think there is any missing opportunity on what regards of the potential for tourism that could be leveraged from Brazil's operation in Antarctica, Brazil infrastructure? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, good afternoon, good day, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me for this panel, and it is a pleasure to be able to contribute. First of all, I just want to frame it first about IATO, that all tourist operations right now are under the umbrella of IATO, which is the International Association of Antarctic Operators. So currently, all the operators are affiliated with IATO, and IATO promotes the tourism in Antarctica in a way that should be create only transitory impact. So this is the main mission of IATO, to make sure that tourism in Antarctica does not cause any lasting effect to the continent. To achieve this, there's a series of guidelines that everybody agrees to follow that includes, but only one ship per site, a ratio of 20 guides per passengers ashore, 100 passengers, and several others. Brazil is not a significant emisser of tourists, so there is not a big market for tourists leaving Brazil to visit Antarctica, although this market is growing, but right now it's not significant. So the main things that I feel Antarctica can contribute in the first place is Brazil as a gateway to Antarctica. So in terms of logistics, our ports are too far away. So for the ships, it's kind of far to use a Brazilian port as a gateway. On the other hand, there is a demand for flights and charter flights to Stanley in the Malvinas Falklands. So this is one way that Brazil could benefit, is if people and companies could charter flights to Stanley leaving from Brazil. The interest of having a charter flight instead of a regular flight, there are only 3 regular flights to the Falklands per week. So it is very hard to coordinate the beginning of a cruise there. And by beginning there, the cruise is shorter. So there is an interest of doing the turnaround there. The other way that Brazil could play a significant role is there is going to be a very high interest in visiting Ferraz station. Personally, I can't wait to visit it once it's open for visitation. And I am sure that many others will be. It is a state-of-the-art station. It has been built recently with the most state-of-the-art qualities. Everything about this station is very, it's modern, it's made to the highest standard, it's made to the modern standard, it uses a lot of new technology, and I'm sure there is going to be a lot of interest in visiting the station. We realize that visits to the station might interrupt the research project, which is the most important thing, but I also believe that it is possible to manage the visits in a way that does not disrupt the scientific work too much and keep it within bounds. So there are different ways that these visits can be managed. And there is the potential, what I see mainly is the potential for the Brazilian research project, the PROANTAR, to showcase and to show to other parties the research that's being done on the station. So this can be done with a meet and greet, for example, panels showing what research is being done by the Brazilian researchers. And this can be a way to, let other players know what Brazil is doing, because not everybody knows. I don't know everything that Brazil is doing. The other thing, of course, there's the potential for generating revenue, either for the station itself or for the project, to the sales of souvenirs and maybe establishment of a post office. The other way is the way how else the tourists can help the Brazilian Antarctic project is also IATO is very much into the promotion of the citizen science projects and other projects. So there's several ways that IATO and its vessels can help the Antarctic program. One of them is IATO often offers passage on their vessels for scientists that would like to go aboard and that can do their research on board. That is done. Some ships can have the capacity to offer passage for a scientist to be on board and to do their research on board. The other one that I mentioned is citizen science, is scientists can create a project that can be done by regular people, by the passengers. And the passengers can then take mostly data collecting that can be used by the scientists later on. So an example that's happening right now is Happy Whale. Passengers can contribute with photos of the underside of humpback whale tails. That goes into a huge database, and it's able to identify the whale patterns, whale migrations and stuff. There's eBirds transects where passengers observe birds on board, seabirds, and they can add also to the database. So a project can be created, usually with an app or a manual. There is a project now that demands equipment, which is a phytoplankton collection. So the equipment is given to ships and they can collect plankton that is then sent to analyze on a shore base. So that opens possibilities for researchers also. And then they can interact also with passengers and help that. So those are the aspects that I think that tourists and science where they can interact with each other. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Claudia. I would like to ask now the other panelists if you have any thought about if that's possible. I mean, Haynnee, you know the operations, how that plays with regular operation and Ferraz or Jefferson, Francisco. You have any thought about how that could be matched, or if you take any advantage, science in general could take any advantages from that perspective, or I don't know, do you have any thought about this, using tourism as well as a tool, not only as an economic activity?
Oh, if we think specifically about tourism and cooperation of science, we had in the time before, even Brazilians have gone through cruises of tourism and participate and use the opportunity to collect samples or to have environment evaluations. Its opportunity is always open. Particularly SCAR has a very good relationship with IATO, and is a great cooperation. I don't see here too much of a problem or challenges. It's a question of having contacts and opportunities. So, but if you see that Antarctic tourism is also important, of course, as a commercial activity, but I think it's an opportunity to make known a system that has kept almost 8% of the planet free from conflicts and dedicated lives. I believe that especially environmentally friendly tourism, like photographic safari with lectures, for example, it's an opportunity to discover stunning landscapes to be preserved, a unique opportunity to show the population the relevance of what's done there. The problem, and now it's a view of environment science, that in recent years, the growth rate has risen too much. And by summer 2019, 2020, it reached 50,000 tourists in the Antarctic region. Compare that to about 5,000 scientists and support people. This poses serious risks for environment preservation for a very sensitive biota. We will certainly have to implement some kind of the quota system in the near future. That's something that is stressing the system, the Antarctic Treaty. One of the challenges is the questions like others, bioprospecting, fishing, that are beginning to stretching the regulations. Let's see how we are going to go ahead. But anyway, it's very important to have the tourist exploitation of the Antarctica, which go further than the tourism itself.
Can I reply to that, or somebody else has a comment they would like to make now?
I'd like to say something. I agree with Professor Jefferson, and we recognize there are two sides of the Antarctic tourism. The first one is that it helps to enhance the activities of education and outreach, not just in our country, but in the country of the tourists and so on. But the second one is the environmental issues related to a huge amount of tourists spreading in Antarctica. I think that most in Peninsula, but spread around Antarctica. So if we can adjust both of them, it could be considered a benefit, I think.
So yeah.
No, if nobody else have a question, Claudia, you can reply.
Okay. So just to say that IATO is acutely aware of the growth of tourism. However, because it is a member organization, it also doesn't have any tools or means to limit the number of tourists that come to Antarctica. So what IATO has been doing and I have for the last 5 years, I'm not part of the IATO directorate, but I have participated on the meetings on the last 5 years. And I can tell you that this preoccupation is just like on top of everything that IATO is doing right now. However, we also believe that the regulations in place right now have been dealing with the stress on each site. So the fact that there is only 100 passengers on site per time, that there is the most sensitive sites have limits of number of passengers that go per day. And we are studying other ways that we can manage these, manage the increased number of tourists. Also, although there has been 50,000 passengers last year to Antarctica, remember that this wouldn't even fill the stage for the finals of the World Soccer Cup. So it sounds a lot, but it is actually in proportion to the world tourism is not that much. And a big part of those tourists are on cruise-only ships. So, for example, the ship that I work can take 100 passengers on the whole season. We don't even take 800 passengers to Antarctica, but there comes the Carnival with 2,000 passengers. They do 2 trips, they take 4,000 passengers. So many of this number, what's inflating this number also has to do with these cruise-only ships that are not landing. So there is this. So yes, it is a concern, and it is a concern that we are looking at with binoculars. We are really trying to monitor this and trying to control the impact that it can have. And again, it's not something to be dismissed, but it is something that we are working very attentively right now. And mainly, as I said, concerning each site, to make sure that we manage the number of people on each site, to make sure that it is not causing any stress to the sites.
Excellent. Thanks, Claudia. Now, let me jump, because we don't have much time left. Just let me jump to the political aspect. We have talked a little bit about the economics. We are going to talk a little bit at the end of the meeting. But I would like to talk, I mean, I have asked for representation from Intermarty. They couldn't be here today, but I think, well, Jefferson, Francisco, and Ed have some opinions about how the Interministerial Commission works. And I mean, hearing about what you've been said, there are a few issues that I would like you to address. First of all, I mean, the POLANTAR is being reviewed this year. It's from 87, so it has more than 30 years already. And a lot have changed in Brazil, in the Antarctic treaty system, in the world. So I don't know how it's going to address that. If you have any hints on that, if you can tell, I don't know how close are those debates. But besides that, I would like you to talk about what you've said about reaching the interior of the continent. I wonder, what's the involvement, for instance, from the Brazilian army? I mean, it wouldn't be relevant to have them getting more involved, just to get into the continent, maybe to provide some support and logistics. How does it work within the committee, the CIRM, about the scientific needs and infrastructure and logistics? I would like you to talk a little bit about that. I mean, how the Brazilian Antarctic program defines what are going to be the logistics and infrastructure needs, and how does it place between the scientists and the political side? If you can give us some thoughts.
Who begins?
May I?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. PROANTAR, the Brazilian Antarctic Program, is the instrument of execution of the national policy for Antarctica. Poland. The national Antarctic policy and the other PROANTAR documents like strategic plan, action plan, and others, they must be updated in order to be fully consistent with Brazil's objectives and interests in Antarctica. As Ignacio said, in July, the policy review process began, and I can say that the main objective of this review is to present a strong, updated, comprehensive policy to strengthen the national Antarctic institutions and to ensure that Brazil's actions to increase the activities in Antarctica became more systematic, more effective. And of course, it's going, I think it's going to think about our activities in interior, activities of education and outreach, but I think that it's not going to be so specific, as Ignacio mentioned, so specific about the role of the institutions, about something more detailed that probably is going to be discussed in the review of the strategic plan or in the review of the action plan.
Yeah, I'd like to call attention that basically, I'm also involved on that. And we see that, well, for the last 30 years, science in general has increased the participation, and that is reflecting this new document. And of course, one thing that has changed a lot since the beginning of the Brazilian Antarctic program, that now Antarctica, as all South Atlantic, is in the national strategic environment, or entorno. I don't remember the word in English. So it's becoming much more important for the politics of the national defense. And that makes it stronger, the case for Antarctica. And as Commander Haynnee said, it's a more general document, more to say what are our interests and what we envisage. We need, of course, to discuss much more deeper and other documents, strategic, and a plan of action for the future of the Antarctic program. And that is how to do that. It's the second step.
Okay, but I mean, if we think about, because one thing that I wonder is science could think different objectives and plans and everything, but if you need to translate that to capabilities in order to undertake that, I mean, how does it work in practice? I can imagine that it was quite a challenge to install Cryosphera. I think it must be quite a challenge every time that you need to think about operation that cannot use existing infrastructure. I don't know if it's very common to use international cooperation in those cases. If the Navy have thought about, I don't know, charting some icebreaker if needed, or how that plays. I mean, Haynnee talked that the new vessel is not going to be an icebreaker, and that's something that I thought about when I read the news about the new vessel acquisition. I mean, why not to buy an icebreaker? Probably Brazilian Navy doesn't need it, but how does it plays with the scientific side? I'm interested if you can talk a little bit about how the PROANTAR as a whole defines their needs and how that goes to the decision-making process.
May I? In order to enhance cooperation and enhance activities. PROANTAR is looking, well, the new station has 17 well-prepared laboratories, and we intend to carry out scientific activities in Ferraz Station, not just during the summer, during the winter period. So it's our easy way to improve our how can we attend scientific aims and so on. But the most difficult to related to this issue is to transport people to and from Antarctica during the winter. So it's a good idea, but we have to have means to execute it, because we depend. If we start wintering research projects, we depend on the Chilean support to exchange personnel during the winter, and it's not. We cannot assure we are going to have this support, because we don't have ships during the winter. So it's not just a Brazilian activity, it's an activity in cooperation. And another thing that we have thinking about, not we, Brazilian Navy, but PROANTAR as the Ministry of Science and Technologies, I have said in a seminar, that in order to improve the scientific activities in the interior of the continent, we could think about a new research model, maybe Criosfera 2, Criosfera 2. But the idea is still under study. We are just thinking about it, but it's an option to improve our scientific activities. I'm not sure if I answer what you were asking, Ignacio.
Yes, that's good. I don't know if somebody else wants to add something.
Can I follow comment, Haynnee?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yes.
Thanks. Thinking, just try to exchange ideas. In my mind, the new Brazilian Antarctic program view politics for the next decades starts from a different basis when we compare when the Brazilian Antarctic program begins. Nowadays, we have a scientific community in Brazil, and we have a lot of expertise in the Brazilian Navy, in the government. So we can think the new frontiers for the science. We can think to reinforce the research in the winter, more researchers or more experiments in the winter at the Brazilian Antarctic Station. And of course, we will reinforce, for sure, we will reinforce the scientific field areas in the Antarctic interior. I'm pretty sure that the Brazilian scientific community is very strong nowadays, and we have full capacity to follow the new ideas for the next decades. We can reach the exact amount of funding for scientific fields, campaigns in ships, oceanography at the Atlantic Ocean and Southern Ocean, Brazilian Antarctic Station, and the interior of the continent. In my mind, my view, just my view, we have three main areas for scientific developments: the Brazilian Antarctic Station, the oceanographic ships, the new ones coming, and the interior of the continent. If we think the whole amount of science is so cheap, thinking about the whole budget that we need to do this science. And I would like to say something extra. When we think about tourism, when they think about the Brazilian ordinary people views about Antarctica, I always think that we need to reinforce the view of students for 6th to 9th grade get involved in the whole environmental lectures and maybe exchange some visits to the Brazilian Antarctic station. Of course, it's not so easy like the Chilean bases because just a flight from Punta Arenas directly to the Chilean base. From the Chilean airport, we need to transfer children to the Brazilian station. But we need to think, maybe get involved tourist companies to have kids on board, visit historical sites, and visit the Brazilian Antarctic Station, have a lot of chats with the scientists, and get involved in the whole process of the Brazilian government progress in the Antarctica. So just some thoughts and ideas about the subject.
Excellent. Just let me go to our last point because we are running out of time. I have a few issues, but we are going to leave that for the Q&A. I would like to ask you, well, Claudia, I don't know if you have any information, probably, Haynnee, about if the Ministry of Tourism takes part of the, I don't remember, of the serum, how does it place with the IATO, if there is any direct link between the Brazilian tourism, Ministry of Tourism and the IATO, and as well, like Professor Jefferson and Professor Francisco, if they could give some hints on how science that is being doing in Antarctica could benefit economically Brazil. I know that you have some very strong points to make there, and I would like to hear you very briefly because we are running out of time. But I start with Claudia. If you could be brief, please.
Okay. As far as I know, no, I don't know of any initiative from the Brazilian tourist minister in relation to the Antarctic, not that I know of. I love the idea of involving children, and even though ideal would be to have children go there, and I participated, Mr. Mars from Mars Chocolate has sponsored several trips with high school children to the Antarctic, and I was part of a couple of them. It is a wonderful initiative. However, this year, on the year, everything is virtual. One thing that I personally always loved was some scientists who broadcast from the ISS, the International Space Station. So I think it's possible to create a program that's virtual but interactive, where scientists at the station can interact with children in Brazil in a platform like Zoom. So I think there is lots of potential there, since the logistic of bringing children to the Antarctic is complicated. It's not impossible. Usually it's a matter of money. With money, it can be done. You charter a ship, you fly the children, and it can be done. I think it's an excellent idea, and if funds can be found for that, it's wonderful. There is one more thing that I forgot to mention, and I'll mention very quickly, is that I also don't know if there is a process for emitting permits for yachts and film crews from the Brazilian side. Again, I've heard that there isn't. I'm not sure if there isn't or if there is not. From my knowledge, Brazil is not one of the countries from the ATCM that emit permits for private yachts and for film crews. And I think it's another potential that Brazil could start emitting permits and being a gateway on that matter as well.
Excellent. Professor Simões and Professor Aquino, if you want to talk about the utility of Brazilian science taking there in the Brazilian economy.
Yes.
If you have thought, yeah.
Yeah. At our university, we are getting involved with the science in the Antarctic Peninsula region and the Antarctic interior, the Cryosphere 1 site and the other points. But I especially was focused on the extreme events in the La Plata Basin that we can correlate it with the atmospheric circulation change during the last 2 or maybe in the last decade. We are living in a global environmental change, and we are living inside of the atmospheric change experiments. So nothing is more normal when we think about weather and climate, and of course, when talk about COVID-19. Nothing is more normal. But most of the extreme events that we are studying in La Plata region or in the southern Brazil, maybe São Paulo, Minas Gerais, São Paulo, Paraná, Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, extended far south. We have very strong events that very heavy rain, striking, and several droughts. So most of these extreme events was related with the new atmospheric patterns and caused a lot of economic effects in our economy. If we talk about only Rio Grande do Sul, the southern state of Brazil, we lost around a year 1 billion reais only relate with extreme event like thunderstorms. Only we think about thunderstorms. Most of these events was really, really connected between Amazonia and Antarctica weather sea region. So if we have the Amazonia region, the whole impacts of the environment change in Amazonia and Antarctica too, the whole events will combine around the area located in La Plata Basin. If we look for the southern hemisphere, we have the same economic effects in southern Africa and Tasmania, New Zealand region. So we can continue our research projects with the Brazilian program and show to all hemisphere the costs and losses in the economics and the environment and the health in general related to the global warming, climate change, and the Antarctica research nowadays.
Excellent. Just let me ask you something about that specific issue. Have been any try to bring I don't know, private interest enterprises to finance that research, which of course has a direct impact? I'm thinking on agribusiness and all that. I mean, has been any attempt to bring them to finance that research? How does
unfortunately, we never reach any kind of private funding for this kind of research. Yesterday, we tried to read some funding of the European community, try to understand the environmental change related to this kind of fields. But unfortunately, in Brazil, most of the funding that we are receiving using in scientific matters belongs to the government. It will be very helpful if we can access private fundings, because we can expand the monitoring site fields like La Plata Basin or Porto Alegre region. Is the southern Brazil is a very sensitive if we think about the whole total amount of clouds, energetic and physics of our atmosphere, if we can compare with the other areas in the southern hemisphere, and use this in the atmospheric models to improve better forecasts, better climate forecasts for the agribusiness, for the energy production in our country, for everywhere. But unfortunately, we always only get funding from the public sector, for the government.
Okay, I don't know if Professor Jefferson wants to add something or not. We haven't had any Q&A, so if nothing appears, I will make a last question, but I don't know if first Jefferson wants to make some comments on that.
I just like to complement the talk about from Professor Aquino. It's quite clear that nowadays the status of a country inside of the Antarctic system is basically mainly on having a strong scientific research program. And we have here an issue that Brazil can lead, that the of Antarctic tropics relationship. And that can do exactly what comes from the British, like India and China. Because that's something that the traditional Antarctic powers did not bother to do so, because for them, the tropics in Antarctica seems, at least in the past, not related. That's ridiculous, of course. But here is one chance that we have it to, it affects our economy, it's important environmentally and important politically.
Excellent. Well, I have, we are going now to start with the Q&A. We have a question here from Rodrigo Conde Garrido from the Antarctic National Department of Argentina. He asked, I would like to ask about the experience of the installation of 4G technology, internet at the Commander Ferraz station, Professor Jefferson Francisco. In which ways do you think that has impacted or improved the work of scientific research? I mean, what's the impact on science in the installation of 4G at Ferraz?
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The communication system was installed by a private company. Talking about a private initiative. So it was a private company that that give for all the Ferraz inhabitant internet, cellular phone, data, and the possibility to use internet and phone calls unlimited. I think it has improved the comfort, the way of life in Ferraz Station, not just for the military that lived there for a year, but it's possible for the science, for the researchers to send data and to contact their professors, their colleagues, and to consult some articles or consult some issues on internet and so on. So in a very easy way, talking in a very easy way, it helped not just military, but the scientists too.
I can give an example, scientific example.
Please.
Of course, when we have a meteorological project in the older Ferraz, I can say here, before 2012, we install some cameras, then we can saw the whole Admiralty Bay and Martel Inlet. So from Brazil, we can see every day, 3 or 5 times in a day, when the sea ice start growing or recovering. So we can monitoring the area of Brazilian Antarctic Station when we have a kind of a system that we have today. Of course, I didn't visit Ferraz, the new Ferraz, unfortunately, but we have a lot of experience between our colleagues from ozone monitoring, meteorological operations, sea ice monitoring, and other specific projects that we can exchange immediately the whole data, and including processing data outside of the Ferraz station and receive the results from the other centers. We can exchange our data, go to the databases much more power, and come back with the results and keep improving the experiments around the Ferraz station.
Excellent. I would like to pose the last question for the panel, just to close the panel, as we don't have any more questions. It's a very general one, but I would like to have one idea, if you have, about in which ways we can improve international cooperation from Brazil to the rest of the world, the Antarctic Treaty, tourism, whatever you think of, one way you think we can work on this and improve our international cooperation in this aspect. Whoever wants to start.
Oh, may I? I'm always talking first, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Our Antarctic operation, our Antarctic activities are based on the peninsula region. What if we establish bilateral cooperation with other national Antarctic programs so that Brazilian researchers can develop joint activities in different places of Antarctica? I think that it could be, because we already have cooperation established with other national Antarctic programs, but they are focused just on logistic activities. So if we can if you can think about cooperation not just in logistics aspects that are already that are fully consolidated, but cooperation with, for example, with the Indian program that is on the East Antarctica, or the Finland or Australia, some programs that research have different areas of research. I think it's a good way to think about cooperation. And
Excellent.
Professor Aquino, we are trying to install new cameras on Ferraz Station. I will let you know if we succeed.
Amazing, amazing.
Okay.
Anyone else want to say
Yeah,
anything about cooperation? Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. I can give a good idea about that. And if you see, the SCAR is created exactly in before the Antarctic Treaty System, is likely to provide orientation and cooperation between nations acting in the Antarctic region. And not just into SCAR, but outside of it, between binational, multinational research programs. We have worked both from the side of the logistical question, but also labs and exchange of personnel. And that's the way that science works. Cooperation to be effectively done in science, we needed to have a cooperation science to science. Of course, it's important from time to time to have some agreement that at the end is signed by a government, but the original cooperation is based on discussion of ideas and having proposals of research. And that's why Brazil has already quite a lot of field work done with different countries. I, by one, as one, have been involved in quite a lot of cooperation inside of Antarctica sheet and other areas, doing work there. But the most important point is not that. It's to share labs, to share students, to work and analyze. Sometimes we don't have the labs here in Brazil, and that has made a big difference. And of course, we have, yes, we still lack cooperation with some of the BRICS countries, and that will be much important for us to all these countries. And remember, we are Southern Hemisphere countries. And if you're not in the Southern Hemisphere, we are affected. Even India and the southern part of China is quite affected by things that goes on in the Southern Hemisphere, much more than the traditional powers of Antarctica, the older guys. So that's the way to go. And if we, and with that cooperation, for certain, we have a better science than we have now, and we can go and have a better status in the system.
Yeah, just a short word. Yeah, I agree. It is very important, and it is a great way to promote it. I think we need, I think it's needed a little bit more of information, education, and outreach. As I said, many Brazilians don't even know what the Brazilian Antarctic program is. Yeah, creation of some exchange programs with other countries as well, to create joint projects, between the countries to use. I saw some of it happening right after the fire on Ferraz. I remember meeting Brazilian scientists that were in other stations around the peninsula. I think that later the project shifted to work more on the ships and on camps, but I remember seeing Brazilian scientists in Chilean and Argentinian stations in other parts. So the potential is there. And of course, again, there is also the potential of using IATO and its context, and IATO will closely operate with SCAR as well. So to use that as a bridge for connecting people.
Excellent. Do you think it will be room for some form of international research project? I mean, truly international, like Latin American research project, I mean, co-financing or something of the sort?
For me, for sure.
Yes, we have already some binational, and we are trying to involve other countries like Peru to participate together in Antarctic research. But you just mentioned an important word, finance. And that is, again, money is the challenge here. And let's discuss that tomorrow. But I think that the great challenge for the next 4 years, 5 years is exactly the financing of science in Brazil.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if you have any final comment that you would like to do. Just I open the floor. If not, okay. So yeah. So thank you very much. We have covered most of the topics we had for today. So once again, thank you very much for being here, for accepting the invitation, and for accepting to interchange this idea. I hope we have more of this in the future, and the